John, what an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Security is such a topic. Oh my God, it's like every week we're hearing something in the news about a hack, about our information stolen or whatnot. I want to ask you a very fundamental question. Are we safe as individual consumers? I mean, should we be worried about this?
That that's a great question. It's funny you cut right to the chase. And by the way, thank you very much for having me on your show. Yes, everyone's at risk because when major organizations that have your data are compromised and your data is stolen, these are cyber criminals, the very sophisticated ones. They're getting your credit card numbers, they're getting your personal information, they're getting your social security number, and they can commit future crimes. Not only do they want to sell that, but they're going to sell it to other criminals who will then use it to commit fraud, make financial obligations in your name. So yes, there's a reason to worry. But there's also a
So
reason not.
wait, let's who are these people?
Yeah, it's become a much more diverse group because up until more recently, it's primarily been driven by enemies of the U.S. It's been Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. It's been very sophisticated criminal organizations that often work in collaboration with these governments. There's no prosecution, and they target American individuals. They want to get money. They want to get secrets. They want to destabilize our democracy. But more recently, these tools that they use have been evolved, and we're seeing the democratization of cyber attacks. What that means is 5 years
Hmm.
ago, or if you suddenly gave up being the wonderful person you are and you decided, I'm going to pursue a life in cybercrime, I want to have great wealth, and you make that
I
switch.
heard tax on organized crime is very low.
It's a great cash business. Yeah, not. And if you're in one of those countries, there's no risk of prosecution. But he would say, "Oh my goodness, these tools are so complicated. How can you possibly use them?" But in the last 5 years, these organizations have made these tools so they're very easy to use, so that because they want to license them. They develop these sophisticated tools and they get money from them. They said, "Hey, what if we licensed them to somebody else?" So they made them much easier to use. Some of them even have support numbers. So if
Okay.
tonight you decide to be a cybercrime and you're having trouble launching your attack, you can get support. I'll call a support number.
That
So
is that is outrageous. That is ridiculous. So
crazy.
so
We live in the gig economy now. So the same person who delivered your groceries in the morning and delivered your lunch, the Uber Eats and DoorDash, and who drove you to the airport in the afternoon, tonight they could use these tools and steal your credit card and social security number.
vertical
Once,
integration. I mean, why not? I mean, I'm doing this in the afternoon. I've got your credit card number. Might as well hack it.
yeah. So
Oh
now
my
it's
lord.
everybody, but the biggest risks are from the most advanced tools, and the bigger risks are from these large nation-sponsored cyber criminal groups. That's who the biggest risk is. And so to come back to your original question about should people be worried? Well, it's not good to worry about something you can't do much about. It's hard for an individual to change the policies of their healthcare provider or
Yeah,
major
that's
financial.
true. That's true.
We can vote with our feet, but a lot of these choices aren't more. At most big companies, you don't choose who your healthcare provider is. And if they were
That's true.
compromised and you walked into the HR office and said, switch healthcare providers or I quit. All right, we're going to miss you, baby. You know, where's that
not
going to
gonna
go?
not gonna happen. Not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
but here in the
But
U.S., if your credit card is stolen, and
yeah,
today, right now, you went out to the mailbox and you got your credit card, or you looked online, your statement. There's $2,000 of charges. You tell your credit card company, they wipe them out. We all pay that cost because they have to charge
right.
higher interest rates to everybody to recover it. But you, as an individual, you have the hassle. But it's unlikely you'll suffer a real financial loss. The biggest danger is these massive amounts of data that are sitting in these single places where people can steal them. And then what's what they do with the data after they stole it? I don't know how many. Tell me how many times have you received a letter in the last year or two that has said, "Ooh, your data was compromised. We're giving you credit monitoring for a couple of years," and you're thinking, "I've already got four of them. Do I need a fifth one?" So
No,
it,
it's all the time. It's at least once a month, and I'm sure it's much more than that. I just never find out.
yeah, that's another issue, which is why the SEC has increased the requirements and the regulations for disclosure. But there really isn't that much that you can do as an individual from these large losses. But there are things you can do from the smaller losses. There's just good practices about, because part of it is how they attack companies and people. And they don't attack in one method of, if I just stop this one method, I'm safe. They're attacking in 1,000 ways. So having good practices, like you used to shred your paper, having good practices about being very cautious with your personal devices, with your phone, with
Right.
your computer, and not letting that malware or those attacks start with you.
If you can explain our audience, what is this physical key-looking thing that I'm holding in my hand? What does it do? How does it work? Why is it important?
Hardware is the most secure way to protect access,
Thank you.
but it
Why?
hasn't.
Wait, hold on. Why? Explain that.
Well, because when you identify who you are, when you log into your bank or your employer, you have to have something that's unique to you. And so they say, well, we'll give you a password. That's unique.
Yes.
But somebody calls you up and they convince you to that they're with tech support. So you share that, or you go to a malicious website. It looks just like the bank, but it isn't. But there's so many ways to steal those passwords. So because there's so many ways to steal them, they become very insecure. With hardware on that device, I can put information that identifies you that you're no longer in the process. And at its core, the biggest vulnerability in computing is people.
Right.
So if you can take people out of it, it's like we don't trust our kids with certain information because they can't keep a secret. And users can't keep a secret, that password. So if they don't even know their own password, and there's so much conversation now about going passwordless. If a user doesn't know their password, nobody can steal it. Nobody can intercept it when it's in transmit. And so hardware devices allow you to do that. So your question, why haven't people used them? Because they're a hassle. If I know my password or it's started my browser, I can log in from anywhere on any device. If I have to have that key, if it's a USB key, well, what if my phone doesn't have a USB port? Okay, so I'll do NFC. Yubico is a great company. They make more of those than anybody. They have an AC. Okay, now I can use it elsewhere. But what if I left it at home? What if I
Right.
don't have it with me? What if I left it in my drawer at work? I don't have it. So our strategy, and I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch for the company, but our strategy is to take all the advantages of hardware, the ultimate in security, but then bring back the convenience that we're used to. And people love using their mobile phones. And so many times your bank or whoever it is will send you an OTP, a one-time
Right.
password, because they know you have this. It's with you. We know it's with you. Nobody,
Right.
people get buried with their phones. It's they take them in the shower. They never leave them. So we want to do is say, how do we combine those two? The ultimate security of a hardware device and that ultimate convenience of something like a mobile.
I gotta say, as a public service announcement, everybody should have some form of OTP or second authentication turned on. I mean, we have a lot of technology that's not just being used. Even in the just simple phone SMS, everybody should turn that on. If you're using a software that has your very sensitive information, turn it on. If you try
Yep.
and turn it on and they don't even support it, you should ask yourself if this is a serious piece of software, if they can't even give you that level of security. So I think that's incredibly important.
People, sorry,
What's
if the public embraced what you just said, that's a very important PSA. There would be
it,
so much less cybercrime.
what people do is they remember a simple password. Simple passwords are incredibly easy to hack.
That's such a big part of it, Ari. I mean, 100%. And also, you see people when they use a very complex password, they think, "Oh my God, how I remember that? Okay, this one I'm going
Yes,
to remember." Well, then they use
yes,
that same password everywhere. So now, once cyber criminals get a hold of it, think of if you have it in 20 places, 20 people you interact with online.
right,
Take the most insecure one, that Winkus link. The hackers will hack that. Now they have the password to your most secure place to use it. They have it everywhere. So it's we're asking humans to do the impossible, make these incredibly complex passwords that nobody could guess, nobody can hack, and then make a different one for 35 places you might use a password. It's impossible, which
right.
is where hardware is necessary.
Yeah. And the other thing I kind of struggle with these online password managers is, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember this, but this was about something like 12 months ago. Um, almost like two or three of these big password manager softwares got hacked. So now they have all your passwords. So I was like, oh, the person
Yeah.
who guards my secrets just gave away my secrets. Um, this this is sitting in my house. It it cannot be hacked.
Yeah.
It's
And it
somebody
can't
has to
be.
break it.
Yep. It can't be used. It can't be used by anybody else. It's the only way
Right.
they can get it is if they steal it. Well, they use Russian hackers in Russia, Chinese hackers in China. They're not coming into your house to steal this. I'll tell you. Here's an example. In the U.S., we have banking
Right.
regulations where the banks have to put your money back in your account if you're doing
Yeah.
fraud. Not so in Europe. So when you look at American consumers, individuals that use banking, most of them would never want to use a token to access their bank
Oh.
account. But in Europe, most of them do use a hardware
Oh,
token
interesting.
because, for the most part, the financial loss is
Right.
theirs. So consumers will even spend their own money to buy the tokens because they're protecting their
Oh,
money.
wow.
If you know your bank has to replace that money or pay that credit card debt, nah, why'd you have the
That
hassle? It's their
that is
loss.
such a I mean, obviously, as you said before, right? There's this, insurance and costs, and like we eat the costs somehow, but it gets distributed across all of
Yeah,
us. But what's absolutely beautiful about your example is the incentive design, right? If you're not incentivized to take care of your own security, you might not. But if you feel the pain very actively, then you'll take care of yourself. That's so beautiful. What I'm going to argue is that there are mitigation steps. Now, here's why. When our financial information gets stolen, it could be credit cards or it could be social security number. The point I want to make is there are things we can do to protect ourselves. And this is another thing that I think a lot of people don't know. You can put a PIN code on your SSN. You can freeze your credit scores.
yeah.
So people don't know about this. And actually, all these credit agencies, they'll try to charge you for it, but they have a free way to do it. So if you look hard enough, there's a free credit freeze, and you can put these PIN codes on. Sure, you can't prevent this company from getting hacked, but you can protect yourself. So I think that's a big part of what I wanted to touch on today. So I'm so curious. We've been delaying this enough. Tell us about your product. It's a ring. How brilliant is that? I just love this.
Well, I love your enthusiasm. We have predecessors, RSA, Yubico.
Yes.
Yubico makes a great product. And if everybody used it, we'd all be more secure. But everybody doesn't use it because of the
Right.
hassle, remembering where it is, the things we
Yeah.
talked about. So we said, how can we make it so we have the best of both worlds? All the security without the hassle. And so we said, let's make it into a ring. So you wear the ring, and you can see on my ring, it's got a fingerprint
Mm.
scanner.
Oh,
So it's not just a matter of having a PIN, which could be social engineered. Nobody can call me up and make me believe that there's somebody I really trust and share my
yeah.
fingerprint. I have no way to share it. And so it solves that problem. The fact that I wear it like a ring, there's so many people that have Aura rings
Mm.
and they'll have the Samsung ring, other ring, the health rings. It's one more ring, but then it's always
Right.
with you. So you always have that. And inside of it is where your credentials are stored. Nobody can access them, nobody can steal them. People download malware onto their phones all
Yes.
the
Yes.
time. There's no way for malware to get on here. There's no Wi-Fi connection. There's no mobile. There's no cellular connection. So hackers can't possibly steal your secret information. So it's absolutely secure. And if you use a device like this to have access, you would have to have the ring, and you would have to have your live finger. And hackers don't have that. They would have to be in the room with you, and they're not. So it eliminates that ability for them to attack, all the advantages of hardware, but a much higher level of convenience because it's always with you and all you have to do is touch it. A token, a dongle, you have to plug, we talked earlier about you have to plug it into a
Yep.
USB port or some other type of port. Maybe your computer's under your desk, you've got to crawl under there. And people crawl under there and they say, I'm just leaving it there. Well, do you leave your keys in your car at night when you go inside? No. The people plug these dongles in and then they go to lunch. They go home. They go on vacation. And it's just sitting there with the dongle in the device. Anybody who walks up, the keys are in the car. So we wanted to solve all those problems, and so we did it. We did it with this
Okay.
ring.
So there's something really important about the fingerprint reader that is not trivial. And the issue is that if you have your credit card, if somebody gets close enough to your credit card, they can charge it. They don't have your credit card, they're just putting the reader close enough to your bag and they've just charged your credit card. Now, hypothetically, that same thing could happen with the Ring if it was always on. But since you have to use your fingerprint, it's actually protecting that kind of attack. So that's a non-trivial aspect of the product, which I saw and I was like, oh, that's great.
Let me jump in on that. It's not as simple as that because there's two ways you can transmit. Well, there's three ways. RFID you see for
Right.
building access, and you look at the field of communication, how far
Yes.
away. If you have you have wired headphones, but if you have USB headphones, everyone's experienced the thing where you're walking away from your phone, and when you get far enough
Yeah.
away, eventually you stop
Yes.
hearing things because you're 30 or 40 feet away. So you can do that's Bluetooth. So you can do Bluetooth, but NFC, when you're at a checkout and you hold your credit card or your phone over the reader, you have to be within inches. So for someone to surreptitiously intercept the communication with the Ring, they'd have to be sitting on your lap, and you'd probably notice that. But the credentials, your private key never leaves the Ring. There's a matching that takes place.
Let me ask you a question. These tokens or your Ring, does it have the same problem of having one password in 20 places?
No, and that's if the audience wanted to find out more, they can look up how PKI works. And the way PKI works is you give everyone your public key because nobody can do anything with it, but only you have your private key, and those two have to
Right.
match. And that private key exists only inside the Ring, so nobody they could present and say, "Is this a match?" And the Ring will say, "No." So now you can't log in. And it's very large prime numbers. When that does match and they verified it, now you can gain access. So this prevents anybody from ever pretending they're you.
So that's really important because you don't have that problem of having the same password in 20 websites, right? You've solved that issue.
Yeah.
I want to ask about another item. Let's say I've got all kinds of garbage on my phone, and one of them is, malicious and it's monitoring what's happening on my phone. If I'm using a token, a Ring, whatever, and my phone is basically hacked, am I in trouble now?
You're going to be in a lot less trouble because nobody can get your password. So they can't log in as you. If you downloaded malware where we're doing a screen overlay, and this is a common attack where you log in through your normal
Mm.
method, but I lay a screen over it that's not really the bank screen. And as you enter transactions to do, I'm changing them. You log into your bank and you say, I want to send $100 to my mother in
Mm.
Kansas. A hacker sits in the middle and changes that transaction to say $5,000 to a different party, which is really them. The bank says, approve sending the $5,000 to this other party, but it shows on your screen, approve sending $100. That's a man in the middle
Right.
attack. This prevents that because the attacker cannot sit between the bank verifying who you are and you saying who you are. So because it eliminates the man in the middle, it eliminates all the most common attacks. It's this after 9/11 happened, which is a horrible
Right.
tragedy. George Bush established the Department of Homeland Security to protect us. And there's an agency within that, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is part of DHS. They look at all the data and they said 90% of ransomware attacks are the result of phishing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 9 out of 10. So I know you what 90. I know you know what 90%. So they said so an anti-phishing
Yeah.
solution is essential. And if people want to get more information on it, they should look at the FIDO website. They can learn about anti-phishing. Passcodes are a big step in that direction. But all these old methods of sending OTPs over the
Right.
phone, which is the most common, or an authentication app, those are susceptible
Absolutely.
to man-in-the-middle attacks, MFA bombing. I don't know if this means anything to most listeners. These are common ways of defeating it. It's getting defeated all day long. When you move to hardware, you move to an anti-phishing solution, if you move to the Ring, you eliminate 90% of the attacks. It also makes everybody else an easier target. And just like home security, your home security system may not stop somebody from getting in, but it does make everybody else a much more attractive target That way you never get attacked.
Yes, that's such an important issue because we're talking about organized crime in essence running these attacks. They're looking for the path of least resistance. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
that bear chasing you in the forest and you and a friend, and he's like, "Oh, run fast, like we need to run super fast." And like, "No, I just need to run faster than you." That
Yeah.
once the bear gets you,
It's,
I'm free. So I mean, it's a humoristic example, but it really is that simple. You have to be
yeah.
a little bit more secure than everybody else, right? So, if you have a password manager, you're immediately moving yourself into a different level of threat. If you're using a physical token, like one of the solutions we're talking about today, and you have your product, it's wonderful. But I'll say, as a public announcement, any physical token, just that puts you in a whole different category of, are you in threat? Other things that I'd be so passionate. This is a topic you can say I'm passionate about. Don't install crap on your phones. Don't install crap on your browsers. Just, stay away from that shit. If you're not paying them for it and it's free, I will tell you they're making their money somewhere else. And it might be your data.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just saying they're making money somehow, right? So you should be
Yeah.
thinking about that.
I agree with you 100%. And we tell people, if you don't, our ring's
Yeah.
expensive. If it's not in your budget, you don't want to buy it, buy somebody's hardware. When you look at this stack or this spectrum of all these different levels of
Yeah.
security, hardware is over here at the most secure way to
Yes.
do it. If you don't want to pay the extra for our convenience, buy somebody
Yeah.
else's. Buy Ubicodes. It's a great solution, but move to hardware and make everybody else the target. And when people look at the losses, they can't go back in time. When you look at MGM, who lost 100 million, you look at United Healthcare lost 2 billion. If they could go back in time to before the attack,
Oh,
they
absolutely.
would embrace somebody's hardware solution in a second.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I speak to a lot of CEOs and very senior executives, and I ask them the following question: What what makes you lose sleep at night? And the most common answer, by far, is that they're going to get hacked. Absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
And what scares them the most is actually that their people are going to just make a mistake, and it's going to be nobody's fault, and they train and they do everything, and yet then they bring on these engineers to target themselves to test if their people make mistakes, and lo and behold, the human element is the weakest. So it's such an interesting topic.
That's a very insightful comment. We hired a industry analyst firm that focuses on financial services. It's called Datos
Mm,
Insights. And rather than doing the typical survey, and they said, this many said this was that, we had them actually have phone
yeah,
calls with CISOs and security leaders. And they talked to a couple dozen. They asked them, what's what keeps you up at night? What's your
right,
main risk? And people said, oh,
yeah,
phishing, social engineering, user error. Like, well, they're all saying the
right,
same thing. It's that their users are going to get hacked, and then once the criminals get in, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 months, but they're going to have this huge downfall. And but that's when you look at. I don't know how long you've been following cybersecurity. I've been in the cybersecurity space for more than a decade. There's a ton of people who have a lot more information than I do, but everyone sees the
yeah.
same thing. Both the defense mechanisms and the attack mechanisms are just racing
Oh my
forward
God,
with new technology. It's stunning, especially with the integration of AI. But there's one, and over those 10, 20 years, there's one thing that hasn't changed at all, hasn't advanced a bit, and that's you,
yeah,
Ari. It's
this is
me.
true.
We haven't gotten any smarter, any less gullible, anything else. So the primary way of defending an organization is
Right,
users. And at the start of the year, everyone does their surveys, and Gallup says 50% of people are quiet quitters. And Robert Half or some HR firm says 40% of people are planning to quit their job that
right,
year. Do you think an employee who's planning to quit their job, they have one foot out the door? Is that going to be the person who's most diligent in keeping bad people out? So
right.
that's why we say you've got to take the users
That's
out of
true.
it. We talked about it earlier in our conversation, you and I, that if a user doesn't have their password or a way to be compromised, who cares if they're reckless? They are no longer the weakest link. And that's what anti phishing solutions, and that's what our solution really focuses on. How do we And somebody comes train. We're going to train our people to be able to spot every
Right.
attack. No
Yeah,
way.
John,
No
the
way.
problem until, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, I felt that I was like able to avoid any kind of phishing attack. Like I got this and I can help other people understand. It's not that complicated. What's happened, especially after ChatGPT, is now people are getting so sophisticated. These organized crime are getting so sophisticated in their attacks that I look at something and I'm like, I don't know if this is real or not. Like I don't know anymore. So my this is horrifying because if somebody who is, self-proclaimed king of the lemurs, self-proclaimed security expert is saying I don't know, and is being humble to say that, look, this is getting to the level that this is so good that sure, maybe I'm like, is this real? But I'm not sure that it is or isn't. Like that is amazing. And they're doing these so sophisticated attacks where they send you an email that somebody attacked your account.
Yeah.
And then they call you up and they say, oh, last week we saw that somebody attacked your account. I want to make sure that you're secure. They're using security education against us. Like this is ridiculous. So I mean, we really have to step up on technology. We have to step up on legislation. Sure, we have to step up on education, but I'm no longer certain that that's the solution.
Well, yeah. To that point, Ari, when you think about it, like you talked about, what can consumers
Right.
do? If you ask me, just change the words on a little bit. What can consumers do to make sure that their plane doesn't crash? I hop on United or American Great Airlines. How do I? Yeah, where I'm going is the same thing with food. How can I make sure the food I eat is
Yeah.
always safe? Am I supposed to go into the kitchen at the restaurant? Well, we have these wonderful agencies called the FAA, keeps our airlines
Yeah.
safe, very strict regulations that are enforced. They have real teeth to them. We have the
Yes.
FDA, keeps our food safe. We don't have a national organization or agency that says the people who have our most sensitive data, here's some strict regulations they have to follow so it's not stolen. And if planes kept these headlines that you were talking about that we see every day, this company got hacked, this company got hacked. Substitute that with planes
Yeah.
crashing. That would never happen because the FAA goes to all these lengths to make sure we're safe. Where is, and most people don't like the idea of more regulation, but where is the regulation that protects our cybersecurity and our personal information the same way our air travel and our food? You may have a glass of water, you just take for
Yeah.
granted what's coming out of the tap is safe. Where is that in the cybersecurity space?
Yeah, this is a very, very fair point. And just to bring our audience with us, there are a few, let's say, security audits, I should call them. One of them is called SOC 2, SOC 2, and the other one is called ISO 2701. The key thing to take away from what I'm going to explain is these are all opt-in. Nothing is forcing an organization to be compliant. Now, I want to say something absolutely horrific. You can be compliant and you can work with these auditors and consultants to be completely compliant, pass an audit year after year after year, and not be secure. So the experts in the industry know that there is a difference between real security and compliance. So, okay,
Absolutely.
I want to ask you a little bit of a personal question. You've had a long career in security and done a lot of interesting things. When you look back over the last 20, 30 years, what would you go and tell and advise 20-year-old John?
Wow. AI is number one. AI is transforming cybersecurity. AI, I mean, it's the obvious answer. It's transforming everything, and it should permeate every organization, every position. It's not. It will eliminate some jobs, but mostly it's going to allow the jobs that exist to be much more effective. And people who don't have, you say, well, AI won't apply to what I do. I do such and
Hmm.
such. AI will touch everything. So really embracing technology, just as there were people who didn't embrace computers when they
Right.
first came out, then didn't embrace personal computers, didn't embrace mobile phones, thought the internet would just be a fad. We just talked about three trends that have happened, in my lifetime. So it's catching that newest wave, but there's also these fake
Yes.
waves. Everybody thought blockchain will permeate everything. It's very valuable for
Yeah.
crypto, but it hasn't changed everything. And self-sovereign identity. Gonna change everything. People have been saying that for more than 10 years. It's probably not gonna. So it's being able to discern between the ones that are legit and ones that aren't. But AI is absolutely legit, and it's gonna change everything in such profound ways like nothing before ever
I
has.
I love your comment though, because you were saying this between the lines. The difference between if AI will impact you negatively or positively is really if you get on board, learn about it and use it, right? If you
Yeah,
fall behind, it's gonna impact you negatively for sure. If you stay in time with the technology, then the risk of you being impacted or your ability to adjust to the impact and be successful is so much better. Um,
yeah. And the beauty is that AI will tell you what you should know about AI. You could go into any of your listeners could go to ChatGPT now, and you can type really long
yeah,
prompts. The longer the better. You could say, "This is me. I'm so and so, so and so. This is my job. This is where I
right.
live." You can put all this information about yourself in. Oh, you gotta be careful though, because nothing that's person identifiable. And say, "What do I need to know about uh, generative AI or AI to help me in my professional life and in my personal life?" And ChatGPT will give you a very long answer with really great suggestions about where you should go in gaining knowledge, learning knowledge. So it's so incredibly easy for anybody to learn more about it because you just go to ChatGPT website, log in, type it in, and there's your answer. So anybody who's not hasn't at least done that, how should I be? Here's me. How should I be using today? They should do it right after the end of this.
I think that's so wonderful. And, people will get up in arms about the ChatGPT hallucinations. Well, guess what? If you do a Google search and you go to, a website, that can be wrong. That's just a person who probably has a bias and is trying to sell you something or has an agenda or left wing or right wing or who the hell knows what. So, our biases as human beings are definitely incorporated into ChatGPT.
Oh my
So
gosh,
what,
yeah. I have no idea how many searches there are on
right,
ChatGPT. Maybe it's a
right.
billion. And so people say, well, look, here's these wrong
Yeah,
answers. You shouldn't trust it. It's like, how many wrong answers are already out there? It's like self-driving
yes,
cars. After 2 million miles, it crashed and killed somebody. Look, that's tragic. Taking
absolutely.
nothing away from
Absolutely.
it. But take 2 million miles of regular people who drive tired, drive distracted while they're using their phone when they're drunk, and say how many deaths would there have been in those 2
Yeah,
million miles? I don't know the number, but it's probably
yeah,
100. So if one person dies versus 100, so because of that, we should bar them forever. It should never
yes.
happen. It's this huge step forward.
That's such an important point. I think there's a lot of fear psychology that goes into that why we're like, oh no, the machine made a mistake. But the truth of the matter
Yeah,
is there's ethical questions, right? So I can say, oh, John, would you rather kill 5 people that you don't know or your mother? And then we can talk about this for hours. But at the end of the day, if you kill one person in 200 million miles, whatever, or you kill 10,
yeah,
one answer is clearly better than the other. Like that, it's not a
yeah,
complicated discussion, so we don't need to emotionalize it. So I really
yeah.
appreciate that. That's so, so insightful. Okay, this is such a great discussion. We're way over time, but let me ask you now, really, this is really the last question. A lot of I have 3 kids, a lot of youngsters today thinking about cybersecurity, about their next step of their career, AI. What would you advise to, these kids starting their journey nowadays?
I think that's some deep thought because I have a lot of children of my own, more than a dozen, and that's not a joke. But
Sorry. What? You said that's not, I was sure. What do you mean? You have more than a dozen children?
yeah, my wife and I raised seven. We were a combined family, and then I'm a bit older than you. So after the kids, moved out, she started working with the foster system, and the additional children are one that we've fostered. Which is, if anybody has an interest in that, please contact me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share information about how to get involved and the challenges and the rewards. It's life changing for both you and the child.
John, we
But
can't not touch that topic, at least just a little bit. I mean, my audience would be crying out and Ari, how did you let that slide? Um, this is like this is the definition of bad journalism when somebody is like, yeah, yesterday was a great day, my wife died, and then we went playing hockey, and then the next question is, oh, how was the hockey game? It's like, no, that's not, I'm sorry, we have to, okay, you adopted a whole bunch of kids.
Oh, we fostered
Fostered.
them.
Okay. What does that
Uh,
mean? What's the
yeah.
difference? What does that mean?
Well, the DCFS, every state has one. It's an agency to protect children, and they'll remove children from a home where they're being abused. Maybe their parents had a meth lab and they're going to prison for a long time. So these are families that are in crisis, and there's a lot that our country does to make sure that it's safe. But you have these innocent victims, these children who no longer, maybe never
Mm,
had an environment where there's nurturing, where they're safe. They're safe from physical harm, emotional harm. So the state takes these children away from these very dangerous environments, sometimes short term, sometimes long term. But then what do you do with them? And so the system relies on people who will open their homes
mm,
to them, open their homes and their hearts. There's a ton of charity out there. People give in different
right.
ways and support causes. And there's so much negative news. But I think if they published all the news of all these there's so many wonderful
Right.
people out there, and there's a lot of them that will help these children, take them in, and truly change their lives. So it's a pretty cool system, the fostering system.
That's John. I thank you. Such a wonderful way to wrap up our show. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is that we're all drawn to the negativity, right? If it bleeds, it leads, right? That's what we want to see and hear on the news. But what we don't hear,
Yeah.
because I don't know, it's just the human condition, is the wonderful and good things that are happening out there. So, I want to say thank you personally because I think it's such a wonderful thing that you're doing. And I would definitely advise our audience to go and look in and learn more. And I don't know, John said that he's willing to answer some questions. So, I'll send you to him since you already agreed to that.
Yeah, just go into LinkedIn, type my name, and send me a DM, and I'll give you my mobile number. I'll answer any questions for you. It's a challenging journey, a rewarding journey, but I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody, even if they're just considering or want to find out more. Reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
John, thank you.
And also, if you have questions about our ring,
Oh, that too. John, what a delightful conversation today. Thank you so much for coming online, coming on our show.
it's really been a pleasure. Hope I can come back sometime and continue our conversation. It's been a
Well,
joy. Thank you for the honor
yeah,
of being a guest.
I think we have a topic to talk about for you to come back. So absolutely.